Good morning, everybody. Since many of you know who I am, I'm not going to present myself. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to present and to spend a few minutes with Father Carron. Father Carron is a very dear friend of us, a father to many of us. He is the leader of the movement Communion and Liberation. And since 2005, since the passing of Father Giussani. And before, Father Carron is a theology professor. But more than anything else, I want to insist in this aspect here. Someone that is a friend and a father to many of us. And we are very thankful that you are here, Father Julian. We are truly thankful. And we had the curiosity this year, thinking about the theme of the New York encounter, longing for the sea and yet afraid or not afraid, to try to explore with you the topic of freedom, because freedom for us from the inception of the United States is a value that we hold very dear. We call this the land of the free. And much of our social debate is all around freedom. It's not something that we are unfamiliar with. It's something that is important to us. It's something that we somehow value very much and continue to do so. I wanted to ask you in a sense, a very simple question is, why do you think it's so? Why do you think that this freedom is so important?
Good morning, everybody. I am very happy to be with you and to share with all of you this moment of dialogue with Father Medina and of all of us. I think to answer this question, we need to come back to our history, because from the beginning of the modernity, we can say, freedom has been considered the most precious thing. I remember one of the quotation of Cervantes, del Quixote. I am Spanish, I have to quote my friend, who exposed about freedom in such a terms. Freedom, Sancho, is one of the most precious gifts heaven gave to man. The most precious gift. The treasures under the earth, on beneath the sea, cannot compare to it. For freedom, as well as for honor, one can and should risk one's life. From the beginning of modernity, and Cervantes is one of the witnesses of this beginning, we can recognize that freedom, in a particular moment of history, has become one of the most precious gifts that human being has. And that compared with him, any other is considered less than this. This is impossible to be compared with anything else. And for this, I can imagine the risk that somebody who who take a ship and enter in the adventure of entering the sea, looking for something that is unknown, but that he is longing for, without having any problem to risk so much. And we can think that this consideration of freedom could be something from the beginning. But recently, the Cardinal Ratzinger said that this high regard for freedom does not seem to have faded. In the consciousness of mankind today, said Cardinal Ratzinger, freedom is largely regarded as the greatest good there is, after which all of other good things have to take their place. The greatest good, even in the modernity. Nowadays. This good is valued so much that it becomes the measure of everything, continues then Cardinal Ratzinger. This Enlightenment culture is substantially defined by the rights of liberty, by the rights to liberty. Its starting point is that liberty is a fundamental value and the criterion of everything else. This is the consideration of freedom for our culture, for our environment, in the relationship among us, in the way our children feel themselves, or their colleagues, or their husband, their wife, freedom. But at the same time, and this is what struck me more nowadays, is that this journey of freedom has begun centuries ago. So we are not at the beginning of this longing for freedom. The modern man and woman have already covered a lot of ground in this journey. Where has it brought us? That is the question. I remember to explain with a small fact what is the journey that freedom has fulfilled along the way during the last centuries, a fact that a friend of mine told me some time ago. This evening, one person wrote to me, I went to dinner at the house of two high school classmates who are engaged and currently living together without being married. After dinner, I stayed for a long time to talk, and the question of whether to have children or not came up. At a certain point, he told me, I'll never bring a child into the world. Who am I to condemn another poor wretch to unhappiness? I'm not talking on that responsibility. I'm not taking on that responsibility. And then he added, I am afraid of my freedom. In the best of the cases, it's useless. And in the worst, I can cause someone pain. what I hope for in life is to try to do the least damage possible. How can we have arrived to this point, from this longing for freedom to consider freedom as the most precious gift, to this fear of freedom?
In a sense, if I may interrupt, there is an expression in American culture, in the young side of the American culture, that is called FOMO, fear of missing out, which is a malady, is an illness that many people have, that they want to remain open to all possible choices, and therefore they cannot, and they don't commit to any of them out of fear of missing something beautiful. So you speak of this, I was listening to you, it reminded me of this experience. We want the possibility, as Americans, the thing that we love the most is the possibility of having all choices in front of us. But this having all choices in front of us fills us with fear. And is this sense of like we've been fighting for freedom so that finally no one can tell me, don't do that, but that doesn't give me freedom. And this is what the expression means, fear of missing out. So how do we come to this point in which fighting for freedom, we've arrived to almost fear freedom?
That is the question that every one of us has to face. Because otherwise we keep speaking about freedom outside of the experiences, outside of this particular point in which we are now. Because this event that I told you is not an exception that somebody who has some kind of sickness needs to go to the psychology. Because this is the expression of our culture. I was struck by the fact that Kafka, one of the expressions of our time, wrote years ago, men are afraid of freedom and responsibility. Not only one guy and his wife in some place in Italy who are afraid of freedom. Kafka generalized that men are afraid of freedom and responsibility, as you are saying now, no? This fear of missing out. And continues, so, said Kafka, they prefer to hide behind the prison's bars, which they build around themselves. We prefer to protect ourselves in a prison because of this fear of freedom. What is the process, asked me Father Medina, that brings us to this point? Freedom was identified along the way during this journey of modern freedom in the society with absence of bonds, of ties. Freedom is an individualistic way of being in the reality, without any ties, without any kind of bonds, with absolute autonomy. the modern world, the example, the icon, we can say, of the modern world, of the modern man or woman is autonomy. Somebody who is autonomous, who is not in touch, who is not linked with somebody else, if there is no bond. As we can read in one of the latest novel of your author, Jonathan Franzen, Purity, we tell us the history of a man and woman who decide to split up because the relationship has become a prison. He writes, even as Andreas was pitying her for this, he was savoring his coming freedom. The sweet freedom of getting away with everything, of never having to see her, doubly an earnest friend again, or never having to have another discussion. We could have spent 10 years in prison. For them, the relationship was a prison. Instead of we spent 10 years together, maybe that was our prison. Maybe we have served our sentence. And if freedom comes to be convinced of liberating oneself from any kind of tie or constraint, then to be truly free, a person would have to belong to no one but him or herself. During his recent trip to the United States, Pope Francis said, there are no longer close personal relationships. It's a matter of fact. There is no need of demonstration. There are no longer close personal relationships. The sense of loneliness is so widespread, no? Even when we are together in a group, no? That this is a confirmation of this statement of the Pope. There are no longer personal relationships. Not only that we don't have, but that we don't want it, because that's can make me depend on him or on her. And this is something considered like a sickness, something to be treated by psychologists. And the Pope continues, today's culture seems to encourage people not to bond with anything or anyone, not to trust. The most important thing nowadays seems to be following the latest trend of activity, whatever the cost or consequences. And the cost has been high, and the consequences grave.
I'm interested in this point here. There is a journal, it's an online journal, the Huffington Post, in which a couple of months ago, I wrote an article that I found intriguing, in which it interviewed a person, and this is something that happens often, who had decided to save enough money in order to live life on a perpetual vacation. Mm-hmm. And when I say a perpetual vacation, means enough money to actually go around the world. It's like a vagabond style, so like without
any ties.
And it's intriguing. It was intriguing to me.
This is the dream. This is the dream. To go around without any tie, any relationship. This is the dream for many people today.
And the thing that I found intriguing was the ending of the article, because this woman had been going around the world for 3.5 years, and had been interviewed by the journalists. But at the end, there was a question. The last question was, "But will you settle? Will you love? Will you be in?" Because she was saying, "No, but I have deep relationship with the people. I have love while I travel." But there was still as if this unbound freedom, this vagabond style, nevertheless, was not enough. Even for the person that was interviewing, admiring that, no? And that this unbound sense of what freedom is, of life is, has consequences, no? Which you've mentioned as you were quoting the Pope, no? We are willing to actually follow this no matter what the consequences are. But we have a sense that there are consequences to this unbound, vagabond sense of longing for the sea but not going anywhere.
This is the question that we need to discover, not as a cultural debate, no, or enter into the books to look for, but to discover from inside of our own experience. Because this man who were a vagabond for years, at the end, even that without anybody can constrain it to do the contrary, he has all the space, all the freedom to do whatever he had decided. But at the end, even his hypothesis had to be verified. And at the end, he needs to judge, but it is enough or not? What are the consequences of this kind of way of living? What is the consequences of this vagabond life? And the consequences are clear. It becomes clear that the absence of ties and constraints is not enough. I didn't read this article, but it's not enough to be truly free. In fact, this lack leads to the atrophy and eventual paralysis of freedom, because freedom needs something other, something different than myself to set in motion my freedom. I need that something can be so important to me to move my freedom. My freedom alone, without anything that can attract me, without anything that can be so crucial, to be reasonable, to use my freedom, I don't care. If I don't care of anything, my life is flat. It's the atrophy, the paralysis of my eye. Freedom needs to be motivated by something attractive. And for it to be fully realized, it needs a sufficient reason. Otherwise, the trajectory of freedom will be aimless wandering. This person didn't find anything so beautiful, so crucial for his life, that he said, this is it. My freedom is to adhere to this. No. For this reason, because there is nothing new, nothing so crucial for her or for king keeps wandering as a vagabond. Like Jack Kerouac said, we gotta go and never stop going till we get there. Where are going, man? I don't know, but we gotta go. We don't know, but we gotta go. This is the ideal. An ideal that we don't know where he brings that. But we keep going, keep wandering. Our ideal is to become more and more a vagabond. And the consequences are clear. This atrophy of the eye, and the reason had been identified by Dostoevsky, because Dostoevsky identified this experience of freedom in his time. The consequence of this kind of conception of freedom is boredom. Everything is so boring now. And Hannah Arendt spoke of passivity. Modern man, at any rate, did not gain this world when he lost the other world. And he did not gain life, strictly speaking, either. It is quite conceivable that the modern age, which began with such an unprecedented and promising outputs of human activity, or this thirst of a longing for freedom and activity, you can imagine the Renaissance time, may end, said Hannah Arendt, in this death list. In the death list, most sterile passivity history has ever known. Because we can see a lot of uneasiness around, a lot of because activities, but at the same time, without moving the center of the eye. At the end, the center of our eye, that is the real activity, is blocked. And this is the consequence, because we have not found yet something that can awake my eye from the bottom of myself. For this reason, I was always struck by the fact that Benedict XVI, quoting St. Augustine, said, but what can move the deepest part of my eye? What is able to move, to remove something in the deepest part of my eye? Because otherwise, we keep doing many things in the superficial aspect of my eye, but in the center part, in the most crucial part of my eye, that is my real eye, my true eye, the most important part of my eye is blocked.
In that sense, it makes me think even personally how, especially when one is young, but even one always perceives the other as the reason why I am not free. So like, I'm thinking about being a child and my father says, no, you cannot do that, and I cannot wait to actually arrive and say, I'll be free when you are not here. But now we are in this situation in which pretty much you can do whatever you want. So it's like the doors of the prison are open, and then it's like, go. And you go out there and you are like,
This is the point in which our freedom is about. This is the moment in which we are living freedom. It's not at the beginning. It's not in that moment in which somebody constrained us not to do something. Now, everybody can do whatever he wants.
but how do I discover
But the problem
now-
is that it is not enough.
How do I discover what is to be free? Because if I understand, and I understand it very, very well in my personal experience, and I understand that I'm not free because I'm unbound, because I can choose to do what I want. And this, I think, is a great challenge to our American culture, that freedom does not coincide with equality, with choice. I can choose whatever I want, but I'm not free. So my question, and I think this is what I have a great desire to hear you speak of, how do I discover what makes me free?
We arrived at this point of a paradox, that we can discover only this through freedom. Because many times somebody can tell us, as in the past, I will tell you what made you free. But it doesn't work today, this kind of attitude. Why? Because along the way we have discovered that the way in which we can identify what is engaged to move our freedom is only not by any kind of imposition of somebody else. Whoever could be this one, the church, the state, the parents, the master in the school, the boss. But that we need to discover what is able to move the center of myself only through freedom. And this is one of the things that I am really surprised reading this in Don Giussani. The human person, said Don Giussani, as a free being, cannot be fulfilled, cannot reach his destiny except through freedom. And this can be a scandal for many people. I will tell you what made you free. No. Even the discovery of what made us free is discovered only through freedom. Because human person, as a free being, cannot be fulfilled, cannot reach his destiny except to freedom. And if reaching destiny, continues Don Giussani, reaching fulfillment is to be free, freedom must play a role even in its discovery. For if the discovery of this destiny, this ultimate meaning were automatic, then this destiny would no longer mine. For this reason, many times we can impose to another some kind of will, some kind of ideal, some kind of truth, but that doesn't mean that this truth became his or her truth. It's not become mine truth. Because I can recognize something mine only through my freedom. The human person finished Don Giussani, is responsible before his destiny. Because this is the fruit of his freedom. And this is the way, the reason, because it's so important, religious freedom. The discovery, always more and more consciously, of freedom of religion. Because the Church, now, in the Vatican Council, has explained very well the relationship between freedom and truth. In a speech addressed to the Roman Curia in 2005, Cardinal Ratzinger stated that religious freedom is an intrinsic consequence of the truth. Not the religious freedom was not defended by the Church in the Vatican Council like a consequence of its failure to convince people that Christianity is the best religion. It not, well, given that we didn't convince people about the truth of Christian religion, at least we can save the freedom of religion. No. Cardinal Ratzinger, or Pope Benedict XVI at that address said that this is a deepen on the concept of truth. It's an intrinsic consequence of the truth that cannot be externally imposed, but that the person must adopt only through the process of conviction. This is a crucial point. Religious freedom is the consequence of an awareness of the nature of the truth and the relationship between freedom and truth. Indeed, truth cannot be externally imposed, but must be embraced and adopted only in freedom, said the Pope. And he offered an example. Martyrs of the early church died for the faith in that God who was revealed in Jesus Christ. Martyrs died for their faith. But at the same time, and for this very reason, they also died for freedom of conscience and the freedom to profess one's own faith is not a concession of the state, but a right of the human being. The Second Vatican Council, redefining the relationship between freedom and truth, has reviewed a correct historical decision along their history. And it is very crucial for us to understand the relevance of this awareness of the Church nowadays for our relationship between freedom and truth, our relationship with truth, because it is only through freedom that we can discover the real nature of the truth. It belongs to the nature of the truth that can be discovered only through freedom.
Which is a very challenging statement. due to in part to the fact that when we think about religious freedom, we are thinking about that the state allows us to do what we want.
This is a part.
Which is a part. But you're introducing almost a vision or an image of the church as the great custodian of my freedom. Mm-hmm. And furthermore, saying that I cannot know or reach the truth if not through freedom. So I guess at this point, the question that I have is how can we discover today, so like the truth through freedom?
This is a very important question that can allow us to introduce in Giussani's conception of freedom. Giussani said, how do we come to know what freedom is? Words, freedom, love, reason, words are signs with which a person identifies a specific experience. The word love singles out a certain experience, as does the word freedom. As Father Giussani always taught, the first step to becoming aware of the meaning of the most important words in life is looking at our experience. When do we feel free? This is the starting point. And we need to come back to our history, to our experience, and to look for some moments in our life in which I could identify, or I can identify, what happened in this moment in which I felt me free. He said the example that you were talking about. A girl is longing to go out to a party. Her friends are throwing, but her dad, unexpectedly, won't let her. The girl's disappointment and anger are the unmistakable signs that she doesn't feel free. And it is only when, and after a heated discussion with her father, her dad lets her go, that she feels free. From this banal experience that Giussani always put in front of his students, because it's not a philosophical abstraction. The starting point is a normal experience. The moment in which somebody has felt suffocated or has felt free. Is from this example, Giussani said, we feel free when we see a desire satisfied. When I can fulfill my desire, I feel myself free when I can fulfill, satisfy my desire. The experience of freedom presents itself to us as the satisfaction of a desire we have. Therefore, the immediate and instinctive impression of freedom, which is all we have, is impressed in the simple phrase that can scandalize somebody. Being free is doing whatever I feel like. However, what is the problem? Why in this social context in which we are talking about, everybody has or do whatever he feels like, and he is not free. This is our problem. What is the nature of the desire that is not completely satisfied? Because without answering to this question, without recognizing, without focusing in what is really the nature of the desire, it's impossible to recognize when this desire could have been satisfied. And Julian is continuing. Experience indicates that freedom presents itself to us as a total satisfaction, a complete fulfillment of the self, as perfection. But the question is, what is the nature of our desire? St. Augustine identified the question in 3 words: quod animo satis. What will truly be enough to satisfy the desire of the heart? What is quod animo satis? Because all of us have the experience that has the Italian author Cesare Pavese, in a moment of crucial success in his life, received the prestigious Strega Prize, the most prestigious literary award in Italian country. In Rome, apotheosis. And now what? And when this success, what can I do?
Because I think that this is, I personally think this is a very crucial moment, because the and now what is what leads us to go to something else. No? So what is it that satisfies, or like what is the meaning of this experience of dissatisfaction? Because I think otherwise it's like our vagabond friend, as you were saying before, goes around the world saying this, and now what? Okay, I go somewhere else. And now what? So like, what do you learn from this point here?
What do we learn from this point? Because this is the question. Why I am not completely satisfied in the most important moment of my success, when I can reach what I could consider impossible to arrive to. But in many times, life answers to my desire. But it's not enough. What does teach us about ourselves, about the nature of our desire? I cannot find another way of expressing the nature of the desire that what Italian poet Giacomo Leopardi summarized in these phrases. The desire that we discover in ourselves, and is the reason because we are not completely satisfied, is that our desire is without end, is infinite, whatever word we can use. If somebody doesn't like infinite, we can use another word. Endless desire, greater desire, immense desire, whatever word we can. We don't want to waste our time discussing about the word infinite. Whatever we discover ourselves with a desire that even the most important success is not enough for us. And Leopardi said, Is it precisely this boundless horizon of our desire that makes us, because we have this immense, endless desire, if for this, because we can accuse things, success, wandering of insufficiency and nothingness, and suffer emptiness and yet boredom, because it's not enough. But this is not a problem because I am sick. No, I am a human being. I am a person who is constituted by this immense desire that is without bound, without limit. But for many people, perceiving the insufficiency of everything and suffering weakness or emptiness is a curse in life. It's like a condemn, a sickness, a prison. But for Leopardi, it is the sign of the greatness of human being. We are so great that we are this enormous desire that anything can satisfy completely. In fact, we can perceive the insufficiency of all things precisely because we have the criterion of judgment built inside of us. We cannot be human without this criterion, these tools that allows us to judge whatever experience we have. That we can say infinite desire or simply heart. If you don't want infinite desire, you can use heart. Not reduced only as a seat of feeling, but at the criterion of judgment. The heart, the problem of our life, is that our heart can't be contented with anything else than with something that corresponds of all the longing or the thirst for fulfillment. And we can wandering around the world and study all kinds of philosophy or belong to another, whatever kind of religion. But if there is no something that can correspond to our desire, it's not enough to be sufficient to move our freedom along the way. And for this reason, after a while, because it is not enough, it is no attractiveness to become mine forever, I need to change. I need to wander again.
And I see that, and I see this as a human, is part of the human journey, in a sense, that even my vagabond friend, at this point we are friends, still longs, as the title of the New York Encounter of this year, longs for something, longs for someone. Even in the unbound life, there is an affirmation ultimately of saying, but I need to be in relationship with someone. And I hear you when you speak of we are made for this someone great that we long for. Mm-hmm. But it is, I would say, almost inhuman to remain in this position without being able to see this someone that I long for. Meaning, ultimately, my friend, you were saying before, speaking about freedom, I can only be free if I'm attracted to someone. So ultimately, how am I going to be able to be free, even to be myself at this point? Because you are identifying freedom with satisfaction, if the mystery remains a mystery.
First of all, the point to identify the only answer to my infinite desire is the infinite, is the mystery, because everything else is too small to satisfy all my longing for fulfillment. And for this reason, I always remain unsatisfied. But you are completely right, because without identifying this infinite in a way that I can be attracted by, it's impossible that I can overcome my wandering around, my vagabondship. We can see this in our human experience. Everybody of us is longing for love and for being loved. We don't know before meeting the person who is. For this reason, we keep wondering, because we don't know. What is the moment in which we can be attracted? When this person, whose face I didn't know before, is revealed to myself, and I have her before me, in front of me. And I am so attracted that my wandering is finished, because I met her or met him. This is the way in which we can understand why, to the moment in which the mystery didn't become flesh, didn't become a face, all our life get wandering, because it's impossible to be attractive for something that doesn't coincide with this mystery, because it's not enough. And we, after a while, become bored of this thing, and we started to look for another thing that can be new, attractive. There is an author, Wittgenstein, that said that the only possibility is that happens something in life. I keep wandering around unless God visits me. I keep wandering, looking for something else that can fulfill my desire, unless the infinite visits me. What is the visitation of Christ, of the mystery? The incarnation. The incarnation is the infinite became flesh, finite. And in that moment, when people encountered him, they were so attracted to John and Andrew that they remain his friends forever. Even making the same stupidity at the beginning for a while, making a lot of mistakes, saying the thing that Jesus blamed them. That doesn't matter. But they were so attached to him that they remain faithful, remain friends, because where can I go? No other has attracted me like you. No other has moved the inner part of my eye other than yourself, other than you, Christ. We can discover this in the middle of the reality, like John and Andrew or the disciples, through freedom in our encounter. The last thing that John and Andrew could have imagined the day they met him is that something like this could have happened. But happened. And really happened. And this was the most important day of their life. They remembered the hour, the time, the precise moment, because genuine freedom, said the Pope, is the fruit of a personal encounter with Jesus. That is the fulfillment of the desire. But this is an experience. It's not a theory. It's not a lesson. It's not a speech. It's not a preach. If somebody doesn't have this kind of experience, it's impossible to convince him that this is true, because it's happened through freedom, in a personal encounter in which the truth, that is a person, not an abstraction, the truth became flesh. And we can recognize that is the truth because no other is capable to satisfy my life like him.
And with this, I want to close, even though I would like to continue, but I want to close. Because ultimately, to this woman who chooses to go for years on vacation looking for someone, looking for something, you are basically saying the only possibility of truly experiencing freedom is not that you get to choose every morning what you want to do. Is that you are, that you have an experience of satisfaction. And that experience of satisfaction is only possible if the mystery, this infinite that we desire, that is expression of who we are, makes himself present to me. And yes, you recall the Gospels and the story of Jesus and Peter, but the only salvation for my friends, for myself, for all of us, is whether that experience happens now. Mm-hmm. We say that the church is the place in which the Christian event continues to happen. Mm-hmm. But how? How can we tell?
In a witness of this experience. Because the only possibility for a wandering man who is around the world, what is the other possibility he has? Only to be open at this possibility, because he has this thirst for fulfillment, and nobody can content himself without this fulfillment. So the question is that we can be so open, so willing to recognize when this happens. And this can happen if we can meet in the middle of the reality, along the way, in the place that we could have imagined before, like John and Andrew, a present in which I can see, fulfill what I am looking for. This is a witness. Giussani said, if we can finish with this, what is missing now is not the verbal or cultural repetition of the announcement, a doctrine, or a set of rules, or a set of values. Everything is insufficient. What is missing is not a verbal or cultural repetition of the announcement, of the truth. People today, perhaps unknowingly, await the experience of an encounter with people for whom the fact of Christ is such a present reality that their life is changed. A human impact is what can shake people today. A human impact, not only a set of values that are abstract, not only a doctrine, not only a preach. A human impact is what can shake people today. An event that echoes the initial event, in which we can find the initial event now, in the present. Otherwise, Christian event is dead, something that is remain in the past, that only rest doctrines and traditions, but without any possibility of awakening the desire now and fulfill it.
Thank you.